Hi guys, my name is Maureen. Welcome back to my channel. I'm a homeschooling mom to 2 boys and I'm a knitter, and today I just want to share with you some basic knitting 101 tips and techniques to help get you started knitting. I do want to preface this video with saying this, is that anytime you're learning a new hobby or just something new in general, I mean, there are usually like 500 gajillion ways to learn something. So this video particularly is how I knit. So if you try it and it doesn't work, then please search other techniques or ways of either casting on, doing the knit stitch, whatever it is that you're having difficulty with. Please find a way that works for you. But for this video, specifically, I'm sharing with you the way that I have learned to knit and what has worked for me in my knitting journey. I want to talk to you about 5 different topics that I feel are important whenever you are beginning to learn how to knit. So those 5 things are yarn, your knitting needles, finding your gauge, learning how to cast on, and then the basic knit stitch. Okay, let's talk yarns, because let's just be real. That's the best thing about knitting, is getting to pick your yarn. If you don't have a local yarn shop, I really encourage you to check out Etsy or even search on Instagram like #IndieYarnDyer or something like that, and find a really good quality yarn, because you put so much time and effort into your knitted projects that you want it to last a really long time and be the best quality that you can. So I really encourage you to find good quality yarn. Now, you're going to see that when you start to purchase yarn, it comes in different weights. I like to kind of categorize the weights of yarns into 3 different categories: a light yarn, a medium weight yarn, and a heavyweight yarn. So let's take a look at each of those real quick. The lightweight yarn is often referred to as fingering weight yarn, or maybe a lace yarn. I'm not a lace kind of girl, so I've never knitted with lace, but this fingering weight yarn is often used for garments because of the light, kind of airy feel it has once it's knitted together. I use this weight yarn, even this is actually a Madelinetosh ball of yarn, but I use the Madelinetosh fingering weight for my yoga shawl, if you've seen that video, and I believe my farm slippers. So Madelinetosh is a great brand, by the way. Okay, the next category would be the medium weight category. You're going to see terms like DK weight, worsted weight, Aran weight. I might not be saying that correctly. ARAN, I say Aran. I don't know, something like that. But it's your medium weight yarn. This I recommend for beginners because it's not too small, it's not too bulky, and it's just a great yarn to learn to knit with. I personally like to use this weight for things like scarves, beanies, kind of accessory type things. So, and it's a really popular weight yarn too. So that's the medium. The last category would be the heavyweight yarn. Terms you're going to hear with this one are things like bulky and, chunky. Bulky and chunky yarns. This one specifically is from We Are Knitters. You need to check out their website. They are fantastic. They offer a lot of really cool modern patterns on their site, and this one is the wool. I have not knitted with anything this chunky yet, so I think I got this one on sale, so I'm looking forward to using this in the fall. I think I'm going to make a beanie with it or something, but blankets would be another really cool thing to use a chunky or bulky weight yarn with. So those are the different categories for yarn. Once you have your yarn, obviously you need your knitting needles. Now, knitting needles can come in all types of different materials. My personal favorite is metal needles. When I first started knitting, I used wooden or bamboo needles. No one told me to. I think I just thought that they looked nicer than the other ones I saw in the store, so I grabbed those. I prefer the metal ones because my yarn slides better on those, but when you are first learning how to knit, using wooden needles might not be a bad idea. because they don't slide as easy, that might be an advantage until you really get the feel of tension and how your yarn moves on those needles. So keep that in mind whenever you are learning to knit. A couple of years ago, my husband bought me a set of interchangeable needles for my birthday, and I have only used those since. I'm telling you, it was the best investment, not for me, for him, but the best gift, should I say. And here's why. It's because the set itself comes with 7 different needle sizes and 3 different lengths of cord. Okay, I'm going to use this set whenever I show you how to do the cast on, and so you'll better understand what I'm talking about. But let's say, for example, I use a size 9 needle, but I have 3 different cord lengths for that size 9 needle. So I actually have 3 different ways to use that same size needle, rather than if I just bought a pair of straight needles in a size 9 and then 1 pair of circular needles, 16-inch cord in a size 9, and then later 32-inch cord size 9. You see what I'm saying? So with this one set, I can interchange the cords to what I need, rather than having to have like 3 or 4 different pairs of different size and types knitting needles. And again, this will make more sense later whenever we get to the cast on and the knit stitch. One thing I want to mention is knowing how to find or make a gauge. So this is going to be really important when you start knitting garments, something that you're going to wear that needs to be a specific size. What a gauge is whenever you look at your yarn, it might say something like 16 stitches will give you a 4x4 swatch. So what you'll do then is cast on 16 stitches onto your needle, which we'll be doing in a little bit, and you're going to knit rows of 16. And once you cast that off of your needles and you're done, you'll get something like this, okay? And you would use that to measure. And if it doesn't measure 4 inches by 4 inches, then that's going to tell you, okay, do I need to go up in a needle size or do I need to go down in a needle size? Because your tension might be a little bit off from what the pattern recommends. So that's super important, because if you spend months making a sweater, you get done with it and it doesn't fit, you are going to be very upset that you didn't make a swatch or a gauge before you started. So super important to do. Now, these aren't really necessary, in my opinion, for knitting things like scarves or shawls, because most of the time those are like one size fits all. But if you are making something that is sized to a specific size, please take the time to make a gauge. It will likely save you a lot of heartache. All right, now that we have talked about the first 3 things, let's get started on casting on and how we make our first knit stitch. Now we're ready to cast on some stitches. I'm going to leave about a foot length of yarn on the end, and I'm going to make a slip knot. Okay, in order to do that, I'm going to place the yarn inside my palm just like this, bring it around and make a cross. I'm going to go underneath the cross, grab the yarn that's on top, pull it through, and I have a slip knot. Let me do that one more time. Leaving about 12 inches on the end, I put it over my palm, make a cross, go underneath that cross, grab that yarn that's on top, and pull it through, creating a slip knot. With that slip knot, I'm going to grab one of my needles. I'm going to put the knot over the needle, and I'm going to gently pull, and you'll find out which side will tighten it. So pull until one of the sides tightens it, and that knot is close to your needle. You don't want it super tug on the needle. You want your yarn to be able to slide, but there you go. That's a slip knot. Now from here, we are going to make cast on stitches. Okay, please make sure, it's going to be very confusing at first, so if this is your first time to attempt a cast on, just replay this video back several times until you feel confident. Okay, so with this slip knot on here, I want to make sure that my yarn is straight just like this. I'm going to take my thumb and my index finger and go in between the yarn. And with these other 3 fingers, I'm going to kind of grab the yarn somewhat loosely. I have a firm grip on it, but it's not so tight that I can't maneuver the yarn. Once I'm here, I'm simply going to expand these 2 fingers and bring it up. So I've got almost like wings. I don't know, what does that look like? I say wings, I'm not sure. Okay, from here we're going to make our cast on stitch. So I keep my index finger holding onto this so that it doesn't slide off. So while holding on to this first stitch, aka slip knot, with my needle, I'm going to go underneath this outside thumb yarn, pick that up. Then I'm going to go over here and go underneath this index finger yarn. And then with this hole I've kind of created here, I'm going to pull that needle through here, release my thumb, and gently pull on my yarn. And that made another stitch. Okay, I'm going to do it again. So I've got my wings. I'm still holding on to my stitches on my needle. So I'm going to go underneath this outside thumb yarn, over this index finger yarn, and then through this hole here. Release my thumb and gently pull. I now have 3 stitches on my needle. One more time slowly. I've got my wings. I'm securing my stitches. I'm going to go under my outside thumb yarn, over and under this inside index yarn, and then through that hole, release my thumb and gently pull. And I now have 4 stitches. So when you're reading a pattern and it says cast on 20 stitches, this is what you'll do. You'll cast on until you count 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 20. So I'm going to cast on 10 stitches. Okay, I wasn't completely counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, so let me just pull, and I have one too many, so there we go. I have 10. Okay, if this is your first time casting on, take your time. You may need to do this a few times until you see that there's a consistency in the tightness in the yarn, and you want your yarn to be able to slide on those needles. You don't want them to be too tight, and finding the right tension when you're beginning to knit just takes time. So just be patient with it, because it'll be worth it. You'll love it, I promise. All right, now that we have our cast on stitches, we are going to make our first knit stitch. So all you're going to do is turn your needle so that it's facing this direction, and you're going to have this tail end. Don't worry about that, just leave it hanging for now. If you were working on an actual project, you would weave this end in your work later, but that's for another video. I'll show you how to do that another time. So you just want to turn your needle facing this way and grab your other needle, which in my case is just attached, just the other end of my circular needle. Okay, and my working yarn that I want to use, I want to make sure that it is the yarn that's attached to my ball of yarn, my skein of yarn. I do not want to be working with this end piece. So make sure that it's going the opposite way if that helps you, and do not grab that piece. Okay, to make our first knit stitch with my right hand needle, I'm going to place it through the left side of this first stitch and into the back. Okay, so through the left side into the back. Now I'm going to grab this yarn. When I first started learning to knit, I actually held the yarn like this. I didn't have any tension with the yarn in my hand. I simply just held it with my thumb and index finger and did like this. I now keep a tension, and so I grab my yarn around my pinky
and hold it just like this, where it's kind of going over my index finger. This is one of those things that you're just going to have to try and see what works. I've seen knitters kind of weave it through like this, through all their fingers. I see really fast knitters still just hold it like I used to do. Play around with this and see what works for you. For me, my tension is like this, okay? But however it is, your working yarn is going to be in your right hand. So we put our needle through the left and back end of the stitch. With our working yarn, we're going to wrap it around that needle, and then very carefully you're going to bring that needle back up through the front and slide that off that left needle, and that is a knit stitch. So again, I'm going to do these slowly. With your right needle, you're going to go through the left side of your stitch, in through the back of it. Take your working yarn, wrap it around that needle, and then pull it up to the front, sliding it off that left needle. So through the left side of the stitch, wrap that working yarn, pull it through the front, and slide it off. One more time slowly. Through the left side of that stitch, wrap your working yarn, pull it through the front, and slide it off. And it's as simple as that. I'm going to work the rest of these. This yarn, I wish you could feel it. It's an organic cotton yarn by Blue Sky. Ugh, it's fantastic. It's so soft. And then once you finish with that needle, same thing as when we had our cast on, you simply turn your needle so that your project, the needle that has your project on it, is facing this way. You'll grab your empty needle and you'll repeat the exact same thing. Again, through the left side, wrap your working yarn, pull it through the front and off. Left side, wrap, through and off. And when you repeat the knit stitch, it's also called the garter stitch. So what I'm working on right now would also be my second row. If I was reading a pattern, I would have just completed my second row. So I have a cast on, and then the first row I knit after that is my first row. So that was 2 rows that I just knitted. I'm going to turn, and I would be about to work my third row, which I'm going to do quickly, or as quickly as I can. I've also heard of some knitters that can just like watch TV. Like I can watch TV while I'm knitting, but I have to like look at my project. And I've heard of people that can just like totally space out, be in conversation or whatever, and not even have to look at their project while they're knitting the knit stitch because it's so like second nature to them. I'm not quite there yet. Okay, can you see how it's starting to get this little pattern, I guess, if you will? That is a really good way to distinguish a garter stitch. You'll see these ridges. And that's it. That is the knit stitch. So my recommendation would be to knit a swatch, a square swatch, let's say maybe 10 stitches, cast on 10 stitches and work 10 rows. And that would be your swatch. And that would be a really great way for you to just practice. The biggest well, maybe not the biggest, but one of the more difficult things to do when you're learning to knit is to figure out the tension, how to hold your yarn, and then to figure out the tension in your actual knitting, because you're going to find that you either knit really, really tight or maybe too loose. And so finding the happy medium between those just takes time and practice. So work on casting on, work on your knit stitches, and practice the garter stitch.
Now you know how to knit. That is so exciting. So if you just repeat the knit stitch, that is also called a garter stitch. So what I would recommend you do is go check out Ravelry and Ravelry.com, and in the search box just put garter stitch, and you will be surprised by how many patterns you can find just knowing how to knit stitch. I mean, I'm telling you, you could even make a sweater with just knowing how to make the garter stitch. So that's really exciting. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful. I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the video in the comment section down below. And if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and stay tuned, because in the weeks to come, I'm going to do some more videos on how to make a purl stitch with the stockinette stitch, how to read patterns, and some more fun things that have to do with knitting. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye-bye.